Hello, and thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time to work on developing your English skills and personal growth. Few people realize the real problem is not your ability, but the way you were guided from the beginning. You are not bad at English, you are just stuck in a learning style that stops your brain from speaking when you need it. The feeling of standing in front of a foreigner with a blank mind is not because you lack words, but because what you learned was never used the way the brain works in real life. You spent years taking notes, memorizing, and doing exercises, but in real conversations, all the switches in your head seem to turn off at once. That experience makes you think you have no talent, even though the truth is you only started on the wrong path. When you see this, you understand the obstacle was never your ability. The barrier is also not the number of words you know. About 3,000 common words are enough to understand most daily conversations, like asking for directions, ordering food, or chatting. That means you may already know almost enough. You just never trained them in a way that helps your brain react fast. A word that stays only in your notebook is like a phone number you never call. It looks familiar but does not come out. When a word appears in a real situation with images and feelings, the brain puts it in a priority area. So fluent speakers are not people who know the most words, but people who turn familiar words into natural reactions. When you understand this, you see that what must change is not your word list, but your learning method. What makes you struggle is not word difficulty, but how you memorized them. When you write a word many times, your brain only remembers its shape, not the situation where it lives. A word alone is like an actor without a stage. It exists, but does nothing. Without context, images, or real feeling, the brain does not know where to store it in long-term memory. When you need to speak, you know you learned it before, but cannot pull it out. In contrast, if you hear a sentence in a clear situation, like seeing someone shake because they are cold and hearing an English sentence, the meaning stays in your mind without effort. The brain prefers experience over dry data, so the issue is not weak memory, but that your vocabulary has never lived in a real moment. The deeper root lies in how English was taught to you. When a language becomes a school subject, the brain thinks its job is to get correct answers, not to speak smoothly. You got used to choosing A, B, C, D and using correct tenses, but not used to opening your mouth in real life. Scores made you think you improved while your real skill stayed almost the same. It is like someone learning to swim only practicing moves on land. Everything looks right until they enter the water and the body does not know what to do. The brain always adapts to the goal it is given, so if the goal is tests, it trains for tests. Then, in a real conversation, you realize you studied a lot but never practiced what you actually need. The right direction is in how the brain receives language from the start. When you hear a sentence you can partly understand and see the situation at the same time, your brain connects sound with meaning without translating. This is how children learn their first language. They do not study rules, but still speak correctly because everything is tied to real experience. When you watch a simple video and can guess the content, even if you don't know every word, learning is already happening quietly. The brain likes things it partly understands, because understanding makes it want to keep paying attention. The more you meet understandable input, the stronger your language network becomes. One day, you notice you understand before you even think about translating, and that moment shows you are using the language, not studying it. The key point is the moment your brain connects meaning without you noticing. When you see someone pick up a glass and drink while hearing an English sentence, you understand the action before you analyze words. The brain does not translate, it links sound with image and stores it as experience. Next time you hear it, the meaning appears instantly because it's tied to a memory. This is the same way you understood your first language as a child, by seeing and hearing together. The mix of action and sound makes vocabulary alive instead of dry. When a word is connected to experience, it is no longer something you try to remember, but something that appears when you need it. From here, the difference starts to show. When you meet language through real context, your brain builds reactions instead of searching in your head. You hear a familiar sentence and understand it at once like your native language. Structures you hear many times become familiar to your ears and mouth until you use them correctly without knowing why. That is not memorizing, that is familiarity. It is like saying a greeting every morning without learning a rule for greetings. When your brain gets used to the natural rhythm of language, it chooses fluency over theory. At that point, you no longer feel you are translating, but actually thinking in that language. To turn this understanding into real skill, you need a clear practice rhythm, not random study. Start with videos at the right level where you can still follow the content through images and situations, even if you don't understand everything. When you guess meaning from context, your brain is learning to connect sound with meaning like a child. After watching, return to the new words or phrases you saw. Checking meaning now is easier because you already saw them working in real situations. Then comes the most important step. Repeat them over time using a reminder system like flashcards, so each review makes the memory stronger. This process is not heavy because you're not learning from zero, you are strengthening what you already understood. When these steps become a habit, remembering words turns into reaction. When you notice you understand familiar words in a new video without checking, that shows the method is working. What truly decides your result is the rhythm you keep each day. When you study a little but regularly, your brain has time to strengthen and turn knowledge into reaction. Studying many hours at once may feel fast, but most of it stays only in short-term memory. It's like exercise. A few minutes daily creates more change than one exhausting session followed by a week of nothing. Language works the same way. It needs steady repetition to build paths in the brain. After enough exposure, sentences become so familiar you understand them immediately and can say them without translating. Then you see that fluency doesn't come from sudden effort, but from small practice that seems unimportant. Another important point is the way content is presented, not word difficulty. When language is simple and supported by clear images, the brain understands meaning first and words later. You watch a video with short sentences, clear actions, and easy expressions, and you understand the message even if you don't know every word. That instant understanding makes the brain want to keep listening, and attention is the key to faster learning. If content is too hard, the brain gives up before learning anything. But when everything is clear and suitable, understanding becomes natural. When you get used to understanding without effort, you realize that's the environment where language grows fastest. The real power lies in repetition that looks simple. When a familiar sentence appears many times in videos, the brain starts to recognize it as one sound pattern instead of separate words. The first time you guess the meaning, the second time you hear the rhythm, and after a few times, the meaning appears before you think. Repetition builds reaction because the brain likes what's familiar. It's like listening to a song many times and suddenly knowing the lyrics without trying. Listening practice works the same way, but what you remember is real language structure. When your ears get used to repeated sentence patterns, understanding moves from effort to natural response. The core is still how the brain receives input, not how much knowledge you push in. When input is understandable and repeated naturally, the brain treats it like experience instead of information to memorize. You do not need to force yourself to learn a structure if you heard it many times in familiar context, because the brain has already built the path. On the other hand, dry theory may stay in your mind but disappear in reaction. It's like reading swimming instructions that cannot make you float until your body feels the water. Language also needs real exposure and repetition in understandable environments to become a life skill. When you understand this principle, you see the key is not studying more, but experiencing better. In the end, to speak fluently, you do not need more materials, but more exposure in a way your brain can absorb. When you hear English in real context and repeat it regularly, sounds slowly become reactions instead of things you translate. Children learn to speak not from books, but from daily listening, guessing meaning from situations, and copying without thinking. The adult brain still works the same way, we just often force it to learn the opposite way. When you change your exposure instead of increasing study load, you will see words come out naturally like a habit, and then you will realize fluency is not a far goal, but the natural result of practicing the right way every day. If you find this video interesting and helpful, please give me a like and subscribe.